Welcome to Powered by Authenticity. I'm so glad that you have found us today and welcome to the show. And today I am joined by Jenn Jones, and I just can't wait for this conversation. I love everything that Jenn is doing in the healthcare IT space and trailblazing for other women out there. So Jenn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, how's it going this week?
It's a busy week. Every week's very busy, but it's been a good one.
Awesome. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am an Oklahoma native. So I grew up here in the state of Oklahoma in a very small town, 29 people in my graduating class. And so I kind of have a rural background, if you will. Went on to college, and there were more people, believe it or not, in my college dorm than my hometown. So it was quite an adjustment. And then jumped into the healthcare IT space right out of college. Was very fortunate to land a job with Cerner Corporation, which was recently acquired by Oracle, where I got some phenomenal training on how to help provider-side organizations in the healthcare space implement their large EHR platforms. And I was equally fortunate to be able to do their first OR system implementation overseas in the UK. So that was a great experience as well. And made my way back home to really continue in that space and have been in it my entire career.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that you led the first Cerner implementation for ops overseas. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, in the UK, I should clarify.
UK, yeah.
I want to take somebody else's thunder, but yeah, the UK.
That's great. Well, congratulations on that. It's so fun to hear your background, and I find it so interesting that you went to a dorm housing situation that had more people than your hometown.
Yes, it was a huge adjustment at the time, but nothing like jumping right in, right?
That's right. Well, we like to do a little bit of an icebreaker here at the podcast, just to kind of get to know a little bit about our guests. And tonight I've got a question for you. So what is your favorite city or place for vacation?
Well, I have a favorite place that has a lot of meaning to me. Ravello, Italy, which is not really a city per se. It is a cliffside town that I got married in, actually, 11 years ago. And it actually had meaning even before that. So before that, I spent postgraduate school. I went there with a couple of girlfriends. Before that, I went with a couple of girlfriends when I lived in London, like I talked about my UK experience. It was often cheaper to leave London for the weekend and go somewhere else. So landed in Ravello a couple times while living overseas. And then I got to know the location originally because my mom was a military brat and grew up in Germany. And that was one of their locations as a child that she would go to. So that is a really meaningful place in the world that I love. And it is beautiful, and the food is really, really good too.
I've never been to Italy, but I really want to go.
Yeah, put that one on your list.
I will. What a great story about an amazing city as part of your background. That's just so fun. Thank you for sharing that. Producer Ken, how's it going tonight?
It's going good.
What's your favorite? I'll take away city because I know how you feel about cities.
I'll give you a city answer anyways. Okay. I don't want to steal yours because it's probably going to be the same. Actually, I've really enjoyed Boston the few times I've been there. Mm-hmm. And get to do some of the historical tours and everything. It's something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, Boston's great. Jenn, have you had to go to Boston much on your travels?
It's been a while, but yes, I have been there a couple of times. And actually, the grandparents that I talked about that introduced my mom to Italy were actually from just outside of Boston. So that's another kind of near and dear location to my heart.
Oh, that's very cool. Very cool tie-in there.
Yeah, you picked it.
Yeah.
Very anti-New England Patriots, though. So, and
Yeah,
Boston
they were
Bruins.
too. They were Red Sox, or well, I guess I can't say it anymore. Washington D.C. Fans. So.
Yep. Gotcha. Mine is Toronto. I absolutely love going to Toronto. We just went a couple weeks ago. Just such a fun city, and just so much great food and places to visit. So Toronto is mine.
Not me actively watching the Jays score while we're recording.
I haven't been to Toronto. I think only the airport. So I need to put that one on my list.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. We were walking through, and I do a lot of work with Deloitte, like in supporting, kind of co-projects. And we were staying right across from the Deloitte offices. And my husband's like, do you want to go say hi to anybody? So, well, I thank you, Jenn, for indulging us. We love to do a little bit just to get to know each other, and thank you for sharing that story. It's just that's a meaningful one, and that was very nice of you to share. So thank you. Tell us about Cordea Consulting. So I actually got to know Cordea through Roswell Park Cancer Institute, where I was implementing meaningful use. And I know we brought in some of your Allscripts trainers to help us with that. So tell me a little bit more about your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO of Cordea Consulting. Started it back in 2008, and it really evolved out of my desire to kind of sit on the client side of these big healthcare IT implementations, and really being an advocate for them to get the most out of that big investment. Started at Emory University in Atlanta. That was our first customer, and we had pretty, I would say, significant and good initial growth just with supporting Cerner customers across the country. Picked up a bunch of referrals pretty early on, and really rode that wave for quite a long time. And then as the market has evolved and changed, of course, we've had to as well. And we've picked up more and more Epic customers, and more and more Meditech customers. And now, of course, it's moving kind of even beyond the EHR platforms, which are largely stable across the United States, despite, a few last minute decision makers to move to different platforms, and acquisitions driving some of the business there. But doing ERP work and imaging work, of course, the cloud and other contemporary technologies, AI, machine learning, all of those things are now very much part of our portfolio of offerings, that we still very much stick to the healthcare space. Not quite as narrow in the provider space. We are sort of branching outside into still healthcare, but got some payers and have some non-provider kind of organizations that we're supporting now.
Yeah, I think that I can only imagine that makes sense. To your point, a lot of the EMR, the go lives where everybody was having that full transformation over to an Epic, I think that's kind of settled a little bit in the marketplace.
It definitely has. Like I said, I think a lot of it, there's still some decisions being made, but really we're kind of down to the three main players anymore in the space. And a lot of the change is really through, in my opinion, through acquisitions and divestitures, moving off of one parent organization's platform to another, which sometimes in some cases is the same platform. So it's not, a huge amount of change like it used to be.
Yep. Yeah. It's more about the time to consolidate into one. Yeah,
exactly.
Which is a huge undertaking. Like, it can be a very large undertaking for some, I know.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even those acquisitions and divestitures are, because, to this day, there's still quite a lot of technology that hangs off the edge, if you will, third-party applications that still support the EHR, but they're not always the same. Yep. And so sometimes the biggest change is around the edges and not so much in the middle.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, it's a huge undertaking. What led you to actually starting your own firm?
Well, I spoke a little bit about it just a second ago, in that I really wanted to be an advocate for the customer. So again, whenever I started my career, I was implementing OR systems both here in the United States and then overseas, and they were really being developed as we were implementing them. So it was often a tough time with customers to just say, well, it's not quite, as robust as you might have seen in the sales cycle, or, reality was not always as glowing as maybe some of the promises that were made. So being on the vendor side, you had to deliver some hard messages. And then also you sometimes felt like you really couldn't help them do what was best for themselves because you needed to hit a deadline or you needed to hit some other target, right? So that led me to really start the consulting business.
Yeah, it's a different world when you're, and this is just my perspective. Curious, it's so different when you go in and truly you just want to make your client better, right? Like they're out there serving patients, and the work that we can do, if I can through technology alleviate some physician's burden by implementing a different type of tech or making truly a difference in that clinician's life, then I'm also, making a positive outcome for patients. And I think that's a different way to look at the work that we do in healthcare IT.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a really strong believer in some of what I'll call the soft stuff.
Yep.
So things like organizational change management and training and like you kind of talked about early on, the elbow support, that last mile, right, to get people to really embrace and adopt and accept the technology, because there's significant investments, and for whatever reason, we typically see that some of those softer things get sometimes they get cannibalized in a budget by being put towards something else, or in other cases, they just weren't thought of in the beginning, and it's almost too little too late. And I think that leads to, larger problems on the other side sometimes that you didn't necessarily have to endure if you would have just had a little bit of thought ahead of time.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit. The first actually provider project I did was meaningful use at Roswell. So I was making the transition from payer to provider, and implementing a little bit of a field change on an EMR screen just didn't feel like a heavy lift to me, because my past, it's just an extra field, right? And we didn't work that initially into the plan about what that meant from a training perspective. And when we put it out onto the floors, it was taking nurses 3 minutes extra time to fill out patient charts, and that's 3 minutes away from the bed. And the downstream impacts to like a dermatologist who saw 100 patients a day, having to take an extra minute per patient is a significant thing. So to your point, those soft skills and realizing those, it just makes such a difference.
It does. It really does, because in the end, it is all about people. It's about the patients, about those folks that support the patient care, and it is a lot of soft things, despite it being a technology initiative.
Yeah, agree. Well, I'm curious. So you're a female CEO, so congratulations, because there's not enough female CEOs in the world. And I'm just curious, in that IT industry the past few years, have you seen any types of, from your perspective, pivots as far as, bringing more women into leadership positions, and just overall any perspectives you'd like to share, regarding being a woman in IT leadership role?
Yeah, I mean, so I think healthcare in and of itself is a little bit better pool of females, if you will, just
Mhm.
because there is quite a lot more female participation in that workforce. So in some ways, it's probably a little bit ahead, if you will, of other industries in having female leaders and having female mentors. And I've been, really blessed by a few of those ladies in my career. And now the tech side, the IT side, is male dominated, but honestly, we do see a lot of females even in the healthcare IT organizations, and like I said, I'm sure it's just a byproduct of there being
Yep.
more females in healthcare just in general. But as far as leadership roles, I run across and work with a number of female CIOs, and frankly, a lot of them have been, some of my biggest supporters and advocates, and really willing to kind of sit down and talk through whatever technology issues they have, and really been great at coaching and mentoring along the way.
Yeah. I spoke to one CIO for a children's hospital, and her perspective was, when you walk into a room for that, for the IT, if there's an issue, you leave your ego at the door, essentially, because you're dealing with the tiniest patients, and with parents who are about to undergo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just love that perspective. I think it helps to show how, female leaders can truly bring that empathy to the role, which helps ultimately, in healthcare, patient care.
Right. Totally agree.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that people are starting to look at is, how do we get younger females to engage more in IT? So, thoughts from you about ways that you think we can really raise awareness to some of these things, like the cool things that are part of IT, or the difference we can make, and trying to get younger females to join the career sector.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big sort of topic in my house because I have two young girls. I have a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. And, when you kind of start looking, the IT's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. And so sort of taking a broad look at IT and sort of everywhere it exists, and then introducing your kids really, really early on to technology in whatever area they're interested in. So, my 9-year-old just absolutely gravitates to 3D printing and coding and, robotics and all the things that you kind of naturally think of from a tech perspective. Whereas my 5-year-old's a little bit, more iPad and less she's also quite a bit younger. But we try very hard to get them introduced to tech and IT in particular, through school, through programs, through just exposure. I'm fortunate in that my husband's also a techie, so he can often get really hands-on with them. But I think the earlier you can expose them, the better off it is, because it doesn't become this, this scary thing or this thing that doesn't have any real meaning, because they can start to understand that, they can program their own robot, and the robot can have, curly pink hair and roll around with pink wheels or whatever. So you got to kind of bring it to them in their interest level.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I don't know about you. Do your local schools do much with like after school STEM programs or anything like that?
Well, we're very fortunate. Our girls go to a school that does have those options,
Yep.
and it's not quite IT centric, but it is more STEM centric. Our local zoo has a preschool program that has a large kind of science component to it. Obviously, it's not necessarily tech focused, but it is still science. And again, my girls both were able to learn a whole lot very, very early on about science. And I'm amazed even to this day how much they retain from that experience as little bitty kids. And that, that was a very publicly available tools to our whole community, and it, not cost prohibitive or anything like that, where some other things are honestly a little bit more cost prohibitive.
Yeah. I love that. I love a zoo would do something like that. I don't know if we do anything locally of that nature, but that's really cool.
Yeah, I actually was talking. They're actually going to extend it, I think, all the way through the 8th grade. So it's got a level of popularity in the community.
That is amazing. I'm gonna have to check that out. That's a good idea, if not. So that's awesome. Well, what other ways can you think of, or, STEM as a whole, it's great to get, younger girls involved and get them recruited into organizations, internships, things like that. What are some of your ideas that you can, or that you've thought of or even implement at Cordea as far as helping to recruit and, expose younger generation to kind of what it's like to be in an IT organization?
Well, so interestingly, I was on a panel discussion not that long ago, and one of the topics was just around women in the workforce in general, and some of the sort of the hurdles that we overcome. And so there's definitely things that could happen with young girls, which I do believe that the schools are doing a better job of exposing girls to more STEM-related subjects. So that feels like it's got some traction at the moment. But where we falter, I think, a little bit, and some of the things that we are, I would say, conscious of inside the Cordea ecosystem is females that have children. I mean, there is just a career setback that comes with that. And I don't want to, it's not meant to say that the person is not able to hold down a career. It's just that when you have a young family at home and it's really hard work. And so having some flexibility with our staff so that, they can work some flexible hours, so that we are, they have more sick leave because their kids are in daycare. Like there's just things that happen that, I think in some more traditional environments is not tolerated for females in the workforce. But the reality is moms are largely responsible for picking up the kids if they're sick at school, and just those kind of things that even if they have a very supportive home life, it still happens. And so we try to be very, very conscious of that and know that they're valuable members of our team. And quite frankly, they often work doubly hard because they feel like they have to. And so we want to make sure we support and thank them for that.
Yeah, you just brought up such an important part of females in the workforce as a whole and needing that flexibility. And, I had great support system when my kids were little, but it's still not the same as, wanting to be at their events and having the flexibility to be able to. And I think that's what keeps people, in their organizations and in the same field, is because they, to your point, they feel supported, they feel valued, and they're probably going to work 10 times as hard as anybody else because they do feel that way.
Yeah. The other thing that came up in my panel discussion is that, there are lots of ladies that choose to kind of take a little break, and whenever they have children, and then they want to re-enter the workforce, and a lot of times they have to start all the way at the bottom again. And so, how can we fast track those ladies, because they have lots of skills, right? And probably had great skills when they went out, and really just need a quick tutorial to get them up to speed again, rather than put them on the bottom rung of an entry-level job. They probably have far greater maturity. Obviously, if you have kids, you've got a huge amount of patience.
Yeah.
So, that's another thing that I think we probably, as a workforce across the country, need to be a little bit more thoughtful about, and how can we leverage these really highly talented people and get them where they're in senior leadership positions faster.
Yeah. And something you just mentioned there is that transferable skill. If you have kids and have a family, you're probably learning great time management and project management skills to keep it all on task. And there's something to be said for that. And the other thing that you mentioned there, just that resonates kind of in conjunction with that, is it's okay to have a gap on your resume if you're taking care of family. Like I think that stigma needs to go away as well, that just because you're out of the workforce for, a couple of years, that shouldn't matter as much. Yeah.
Doing something pretty important, right? And it goes for men as well. And, there's plenty of fellas that stay home as well. So I think just showing some grace there is something that we probably should do.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think more and more too is in families they have to make the decision about who's going to stay home, and regardless of gender, making that commitment is, again, you're still going to have those same transferable skills, and coming back into the workforce, it's important to be able to shine those skills. Yeah, as far as your personal and professional growth, how has networking played a part in that growth for you?
Well, networking is absolutely key. I mean, and I really enjoy networking. I'm just sort of curious by nature, and so having the opportunity to ask questions and talk to a wide variety of people about their experiences and their journeys is very fulfilling for me. And I will say that over the years, networking events, conferences, societies, all of those various things have really, I think, exponentially helped me, not only with building Cordea, but also serving our customers, just understanding where they're at and where to meet them is really helpful, because I think you probably understand this and know this well, but maybe not everyone does. But a small rural hospital, in their maturity and their growth of their IT department and how they serve their community, is probably going to be in a very different state of maturity, is what I'll call it, compared to a large nationally publicly traded healthcare conglomerate. Right? They have different resources, they have different problems they're trying to solve. And so for me, the best way to kind of understand that whole range is to talk to a whole variety of people who are experiencing different things despite, being in the same industry. And those networking events really, really help get to those people, and also show like I said, just the vast difference between them. They're standing side by side sometimes in a circle, talking about a particular problem, and they're tackling it from very different angles.
Yep. Yeah, it's much different to have a resource pool that almost feels unlimited in those large hospital systems versus the rural ones. I visited a hospital in Montana one time, and I felt like, the same person was doing 14 different jobs because there just wasn't the pool of people available in Montana, this little town of Montana, to be able to support the healthcare system. And it was interesting to hear versus going into, like a large conglomerate in New York City.
Right. Yeah. Treating, sometimes the same things, but sometimes just really vastly different.
Yeah. What's interesting, kind of fun if you're, I think probably in the field, is hearing like how they could teach each other, though, right? Like there's so much that a larger health system could learn about how they're resource pooling and juggling in a smaller organization, and vice versa. How a large healthcare system's handling even an application issue. It's interesting to see how even bringing those teams together and networking amongst them, how much they can learn from each other.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And sometimes they develop partnerships, and obviously technology plays a huge part in how they can connect with one another. And and really share that knowledge across large geographic spaces. And I've even seen virtual hospitals that are, your experts are treating patients from way, way far, far locations. So it all ties together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, remote monitoring, and patient monitoring and all of that. It's just so interesting to me, and it's just, I think it's a cool learning opportunity across the board for people to go in and experience different ways of supporting healthcare systems. So pretty cool. As far as like hymns and chime, so for listeners, I'll link in the show notes out to those sites. But how do you see them supporting not only like the change in the industry, but supporting women and getting women more involved with healthcare IT?
Yeah, you're definitely seeing more and more, especially at those two with those two organizations. So there's very specific call outs now. Be it at their conferences or their events or even in their publications around women in healthcare, women in healthcare IT, more specifically for both of those organizations. So they're, I believe, doing a great job of helping women find each other in this space, and then helping bring topics that are really important to discuss amongst each other. It's actually really great to see, and I've been lucky enough to participate in a few of those over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Any other organizations that you could think of that, if one of our listeners is interested about, learning about, organizations, and both of those are very good networking opportunities actually as well. But any other organizations or places that you go to as far as a resource for learning more and getting more involved?
Yeah, well, so HIMSS in particular has, they have national events, but then they also have local events. So I would really encourage anyone who maybe can't swing a big trip to Las Vegas or wherever their annual conference might be held any given year, to look in their local, sort of their local city or their closest city, because chances are there's some sort of HIMSS chapter there that you can get involved with. The other one that I've found helpful in the last couple of years is Becker's. Becker's does a number of events. Now, it's a little bit more broadly in like a healthcare umbrella, but there are technology tracks within their events as well. There's a number of virtual events too for folks who maybe, again, can't travel to Chicago on a whim to go to a conference. There's a lot that all of those organizations put on virtually. I'm trying to think of other things that, I've been fortunate enough to find in my community. These are really community-centric organizations, so they're not like franchises across the country, but like I'm part of a women's entrepreneurial group. I know that my controller within my organization within Cordea also has found a women in finance and accounting group that meets periodically, and so those are also equally valuable tools that and learning opportunities that folks can find in their zip codes. And while my local women's entrepreneurial group is not healthcare or IT centric, we still get a whole lot from each other. Yeah. You'd be amazed. Like there's ladies in my group that are operating storefronts or restaurants, and so their problems are a lot different in some ways, but in other ways they're exactly the same. So you can get a lot of benefit out of just meeting with a group of peers and talking through whatever's on your mind.
Yeah, I love that. And to your point, similar problems, either growth, revenue,
yeah.
They may have a different type of product, so to speak, that they're selling, but it's still the same mindset of how do you grow and how do you grow your organization. And it probably lends a completely different perspective that sometimes you're just like, oh yeah, that I could apply that and use it.
Yeah, it's so funny because sometimes I find that the questions, like if I present a problem, if you will, or something that I'm thinking about, sometimes the person who is the furthest from my industry and my expertise will ask me some of the most basic and simple questions that I probably just kind of skipped over or just
Yep.
didn't even consider. That then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, despite us not being in the same industry or the same space, you do need those kind of people around you to just ask questions. They think through it just like anybody else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that. I had a guest on not that long ago who talked about building your own personal advisory board. And so,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, and the benefit of finding the one person who will also challenge you. So making sure you're going
Mhm.
back to those basics.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what those peer groups are great for because they have no vested interest in anything but you,
Yeah.
right? So I very much appreciate those folks in my life.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, what is next for yourself and for Cordea? Anything on the horizon?
Yeah, lots of things actually. But so we've spent the last year or two ish on really investing in a number of things. But the biggest couple of things are really expanding our advisory services, and so we're seeing a lot of traction in that space. We've always done that, but we wanted to do more of it. Especially with the way the market is going with all of these, again, I kind of call them contemporary technologies where not everybody, we don't actually know what's going to happen with AI or who's going to win that race. And so we really wanted to position ourselves more in that area. So we're spending a lot of cycles and investing a lot in developing relationships inside of our accounts and showing how valuable we can be from a trusted advisor engagement. So that's a big thing. I mentioned that the market is kind of expanding, and so we are also investing really heavily in our cloud practice, in those contemporary technologies, making sure that because we don't develop software or anything like that, but we do need to know who the front runners are and when it makes sense to be like a multi-cloud kind of situation versus single cloud, and likewise the same thing with some of those AI, machine learning, et cetera, platforms. And frankly, at this point, there's not many platforms, but use case providers and things like that. So definitely investing heavily and bringing that to our customers right now.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I think, it's funny. I was at HIMSS, not in 2024, but 2023. And, AI was such a hot topic then. And I think where, what people don't realize is just even the governance that needs to go in for an organization when they're starting to talk about what AI would mean for them.
Yeah, exactly. You almost need and we are actively working with our customers on this, but in some cases it's obvious, but in other cases it's a little bit of a sell, but you almost need an AI strategy, or a contemporary technology strategy, where you as an organization kind of understand where you're at on that journey and how risk adverse or how risk tolerant you are, so that you can begin to map out that plan for your organization and know when to pull the right triggers to get the right technology in that will be accepted by your organization. So that's all really exciting stuff for us, and we're really, really enjoying having those conversations with our customers right now.
Yeah, that's great. That's exciting. I think back to how even adverse people were to having a bot back in 2020, and then very quickly they had to get a front end, like a COVID-19 symptom checker before they could go be seen, and it's like that's yep. That's a bot.
Yeah, it does get accepted relatively quickly, especially whenever the organizations across town from one another sort of implement similar or same technology. You kind of got to get on the bus at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's fun. I find that stuff very interesting. Congratulations on that growth, and the cloud transformation topic, is needed. And, I could talk all day about security impacts and all that other good stuff, but
another hot topic,
yeah,
for sure.
But congratulations for that. That's exciting. Do you have a summer vacation planned at all?
We actually have already taken our summer vacation.
Amazing.
We went to Montreal and up into Canada, and really, really enjoyed our time, both in the city and in the mountains, kind of relaxing and taking part of the fresh air.
Oh, Montreal is beautiful.
It was. I don't know. I don't know what my expectations were. I've always heard really good things about it, but we really, really enjoyed it. We were there right before the Formula One race, and so there was a lot of energy around that and hoopla. So that was pretty neat too.
That is amazing. That's awesome. Well, Jenn, I love this conversation. Thank you for providing me the time to be able to talk with you. It was great to get to know you and hear about the work that you're doing and your perspective about women in healthcare IT. I love the conversation about and hearing about your kids' zoo experience within STEM. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, no problem. It was really fun, and I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Producer Ken, thanks for helping tonight.
You got it.
All right. And I'd also like to thank GoArt here in Batavia, New York, for the use of their podcast studio. It's great to have the community rallying behind us here at Powered by Authenticity. So a huge thank you to them as well. And Jenn, thank you again. I really just, I appreciated getting to know you in our discussion tonight, and I value your time. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise to both you and Ken. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thank you. And thank you to all of my listeners. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you.